What is up, guys? Welcome back to the mXrevival channel. Today we're going to be going over this beautiful 2006 RC4 tribute build that we did for an amazing friend and customer. Dan, thank you so much for the opportunity to do this. Guys, we're going to jump into all the cool parts and pieces, all the custom bits, triple clamps, wheels, pipes, engine build, the whole thing. Now, before we do that, I want to let you know that I've made it very easy for you guys to find all the exact same parts and pieces we go over today. Check out mxrevival.com. I started a new page called Shop Per Build. So anything mXrevival kicks out, whether it be a giveaway bike, more on that in a minute, or a customer build, I'm going to post that bike and you can find the exact parts. So check it out when you have some free time. And if you like bike builds, consider following the channel. Now back to that other 06 RM250 build and giveaway. You can find that on the mXrevival website as well. If you want a frame up built, full custom, one of one RM250 that's worth about $25,000 to $30,000 in completion. You don't want to miss out on that. I've got about 100 slots left as of today, so get over there before they're gone. Only 350 people are allowed into that build and giveaway. Now, if you guys do end up on my website, I want to let you know how much that means to me. Your support means the world. Thank you so much for checking everything out. And having said all of that, let's go ahead and jump into this badass 06 RM250 RC4 tribute build. Here we go. What a beautiful bike it turned out to be. As you can see, surrounded by copious amounts of Suzukis. That's how I like to be. It's a good way to be. Man, in the presence of this thing too, so honored to be able to do this for you, Dan. I really appreciate the opportunity. It means a lot to me and everyone else that's sent bikes my way to transform. You guys are going to see also it takes an absolute army to do this a certain way, and they can be even crazier. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, the first guy I'd like to start with in that army, my boy Dean at Fast Blast and Coat. He is the backbone. When these bikes get ripped apart, first thing that happens is the frames, various other components go out for coatings, Cerakote, whatever it may be. So Dean went ahead and replicated with a gloss black some powder coating on this frame. He also did a couple other little touches, very light Cerakote, almost none on this bike because we were trying to replicate Ricky's bike. So a couple brake master cylinder caps. That's about the extent of the Cerakote for the most part, besides some engine covers that we'll get to when we get down to the heart of the beast. So Dino, you killed it. Thank you so much for everything you do for me, for us. There is so much going on with this bike. It is so hard to pick a spot to start and get a flow so we can get through what happened with this build. But I'll go ahead and start up top. My friends at MX Plastics and DeCal Works replicated these decals for me. They won't put their name on anything they've replicated, which is pretty cool. But you guys will see on my website where to get this thing, and that's where it actually comes from. MX Plastics hooked it up with the OE body. When you're doing a Ricky bike, you can't get all that factory unobtainium. You got to at least keep the OG body. So looks very good. Actually rekindled my spark for the OG body with all these restyle kits that are out and front end swaps and this and that. I think this looks really good. It's a timeless body style for sure. My friends at DeCal also plugged us with a nice gripper seat. Got the sipes up top, black on black on black with black stitching. I always thought the brand logos on the seats were a nice factory looking touch. So same thing on all these bike builds. You know, the Suzuki logo, gotta have it. So Ron and crew at DeCal Works, amazing job. Helped me out with some changes where we were, for example, unable to get, say, tag sprockets back in the day that would have been on this bike. Swap a few things out in here and there. And Ricky ran Bridgestones, not Dunlops, but we got some of the amazing MX34s on here. Probably the best tire I've ridden to date so far. Of course, Ricky ran Pro Tapers. These took over a year to get. Pro Taper was out of stock forever. It was hell to get a set of these. A little bit of Pro Taper controls, quick adjust on the clutch lever there, and that segues nicely into what lurks beneath the Ride Engineering split triple clamp. Very freaking cool that you can get something like this for a bike so old that nobody's really making parts for. These help a lot with suspension action. The idea behind split clamps is to keep the fork bind down as the lower tube makes its way through the upper tube. It's not a perfect line. This stuff does bend somewhat, if you can imagine it sort of arcing in, so that helps a lot with that. Also some really nice touches like the torque spec down there, so you guys know what to torque your stuff to. It's a little bit different. Have some nice one-piece bar mounts in there. with a bunch of M6 hardware, so anti-twist when you crash. Something else that was really cool about these clamps, you may or may not be able to see down there, is that these secondary holes here, they were built to accommodate either this OG front plate or the more modern, this style here, or this style here, 25, 08 to 17. On this setup, there's also different tabs behind the number plate down low to shelf or hold properly these front plates on these newer models. So kind of an all-in-one there on plastic mounting, pretty genius. Adrian, thanks for being a part of our builds. You absolutely killed these natural silver clamps. Come with a stem, come with a lower bearing, all that stuff's already installed. All you need is an upper bearing and race, but nut up top, all that comes with it. And that'll be one of many items we go over that's actually covered on the mXrevival website, so you can find it quite easily. Up front, we've got one of Josh's 3D printed brake line guides. Josh owns 3DP Moto. The reason we need to run this up front is because with these clamps, it does delete the factory front brake line guide that would be here. There's a couple different styles. For example, the 08 through 17 is different from the 18 through 25, and also from the 01 to 08 when these were discontinued. So because of that, you just get one of these bad boys. He also hooked us up with 3D printed rear brake line guides, so you guys can get full kits from Josh at 3DP Moto. Anything you guys do not find in the shop for build, I'm going to leave a link for all these guys down below if we don't carry it on the site. Josh also has swing arm plugs for the YZs. He and I are also working on some CDI holders for these guys here. We're going to come up with an RM250 one shortly. We have a CR250 one in the works. So anything we can get our hands on, Josh pretty much handles it and 3D prints it. Stuff like that is obsolete, so be sure to check them out. You can't get that from Suzuki anymore, can't get that from Honda anymore. Really cool to be able to reproduce that for all you two-stroke lovers. All right, let's talk about it. Very, very hard to miss. This Kashima colored anodizing on these upper tubes, AHM factory services. Of course, they've got the DLC coated lowers. Very slick, very uniform. This thing looks super factory. Brandon actually owned a legit RC4 bike, I'm pretty sure. So all these styling cues and touches, like the black anodized fork lugs, those are the stock ones, so that's something you guys can do to your bike, are cues that were from the bike of its day. And what I love about Brandon and all the guys over at AHM is that I say, hey, I'm doing an RC4 replica. I don't have to say, hey man, can you change this color red? Can you do this? Can you do that? Can you anodize this? Can you anodize that? I did not ask him for these red cartridge tops. He just threw them in there. He knows what we're doing. He knows what's going on with his bike. He knows what we're shooting for. Compression adjuster, didn't ask for this. It's the same color as some of the older A-kit stuff. This is just a production shock, but it has an A-kit look, which is super cool. Like I said, I didn't ask for that. Down below, you got an anodized clevis in there. A little bit difficult to see, but also DLC coating on the rear shock shaft. Everything is touched. Just such an amazing job. Also valved and sprung for Dan's weight and ability. So this is a turnkey deal. Brandon and crew absolutely destroyed it. My buddy Tony over at Elite Moto Factory, also my business partner and co-owner of MX Skill Shack. You guys are aware of what that is if you've been following mXrevival long enough. Went ahead and drilled these master cylinders for me. Threw in some of this safety wire, something they would have run back on the factory teams back in the day. So that is a product of some of Tony's many years of factory racing experience. It looks amazing. This bike deserved it. The brake lines also came with these drilled banjo bolts. And so there you have it. It looks super cool. This bike was begging for it. Tony, thank you so much for sharing that with me, sharing that with Dan. And if you guys want to learn how to do stuff like that, I'll leave a link to MX Skill Shack below, because we're building these bikes and giving them to you guys. We've got no other use for them except for to find them new homes with you. So check that out when you get some free time too. Of course, I went ahead and deconstructed, vapor blast, and rebuilt all the braking systems. So those are really nice looking. No Cerakote, just want to kind of keep it OG Suzuki where we can. Also, you'll notice the vapor blasting is nice and bright and shiny, but it isn't on an overboard level where it's kind of blinding you. So tried to keep it more factory looking. Again, a little bit of Cerakote on the master cylinder caps from Dino. Just try to keep it tasteful. Another one of my favorite people on planet Earth, Dave. over at Bolt Motorcycle Hardware supplied all of the fasteners. You guys can see the bodywork fasteners there. They come with the aluminum inserts. This particular kit, per request, they made me some dished head M6 kits. So throughout the engine, throughout the chassis, you'll find Bolt Motorcycle Hardware products. Even these drilled washers are something that they carry. So subframe down here, these special master cylinder bolts actually come in the kit as well. All over the chassis, everywhere you go. Like I said, engine fastener kit, bodywork fastener kit. All the pinch bolts are in these kits, although these clamps do come with pinch bolts. Needed Bolt Motorcycle Hardware pinch bolts down here. All the fork guard bolts are Bolt Motorcycle Hardware as well, just the whole bike. So one of those things that can be overlooked because it's hardware. And without Dave, the bike would not be held together. It would not be this shiny. I really appreciate everything you've done for me over all these years, buddy. Now, if it's large hardware, axle nut, axle pin itself. Oh, by the way, these chain adjusters come in all the Bolt Motorcycle Hardware kits, or linkage nuts, linkage pins, swing arm main pins, front axles, engine hangers, all those sorts of things. You can get those re-zinc. We actually stripped the old zinc, vapor blasted them, which is how they end up so shiny, which is the prep beforehand, and then replated all of those. So you can keep that OE stuff, fix it up, make it look brand new, probably save $1,000 by doing that. Front axle as well. Let's go ahead and hit these wheels real quick. Something very special from my friends at Dubya. This is, of course, the magnesium Hon hub. Got the yellow gold Excel rim. We just went with a silver spoke and a silver nipple. Very period correct. And also, if you need to adjust your spokes, you're not going to knock the anodizing off the nipples, which is very annoying. But what's really cool about these, something we did with my buddy Nick from Metro Lakes before these wheels were built. So we sent the hubs solo off to Nick so we could laser etch some RC4 logos in there. So Nick went ahead and took these hubs, set them up in his laser. You can probably hire him to do the same, and shot some really cool RC4 logos in there. Came out amazing. Just a nice touch for a bike like this. These wheels are one of the items you will find in that shop per build, amongst others. Just something to make it easy for you guys. You guys are also going to find these Moto Master Vintage Series rotors. When I was getting this bike set up, the vision, the build, you want to find stuff that looks like, if you can't find the original stuff, looks like the actual bike you're trying to replicate or pay tribute to. So these were the ticket. This is a very OE looking Suzuki rotor, even though it's the Vintage Series, which is kind of for the older bikes. It just hit the nail on the head. So it's not oversized up front. They look killer on the bike. They look a lot like what Ricky ran, although I don't have a factory billet caliper up front or a 270, 280, whatever it was, brake from back in the day. But they look amazing. You can find those on the side as well. Now, as we get into the engine part of this video, we'll go ahead and hit the pipe first because it is impossible to avoid. These things are always out of stock. They were out of stock when I started this build. They are out of stock now, unfortunately. They come and they go. Actually pulled a favor. My buddy Ben at Langston Motorsports, hit him up. He was my in for Pro Circuit. Said, hey man, I really need one of these pipes. Can you help me? They're out of stock on the site. 2 days later, one was on my porch. I couldn't believe it. So dude pulled some strings for me. Ben and the crew at Langston, appreciate you guys and all the years I've been able to get to know you better. This bad boy has been stripped. Knocked some of the surface rust off, though there wasn't much. A lot of times with these brand new pipes, you'll have a little bit of, I don't know, a little bit of pepper on there. So Dean actually taught me how to strip those, brush these with some of Cameron's Prime MX pads, do your best to get it very uniform. Then Dino went ahead and torched or blued all the welds for me and shot a Cerakote high temp clear coat on this thing. So now it's not going to rust if it gets hit with the rocks. And for now, it just looks amazing. We'll talk about the carbon Kevlar silencer when we flip the bike around. Next up, we've got my man Jimmy, legendary Jimmy Haeseker power plant in here. This thing went out to Jim for a full rework. Jim, of course, stripped the thing down, found it had a really destroyed transmission inside of it, which are getting a little harder to find for these bikes, unfortunately. The vapor blasted everything, rebuilt the crank, got an AHM head on there. Of course, he strips the anodizing. They're normally gold, make it look a little bit more like it did in its day. Went ahead and rebuilt this whole thing, obviously, front to back. Got a nice billet Henson clutch cover on there. Nothing crazy inside, porting, polishing. It's just a nice turnkey, super solid and reliable engine, maybe a little higher compression from the VHM head. As mentioned, one of Dave's Bolt motorcycle hardware engine fastener kits in there. They're only like 40 bucks and they do the whole engine. It's kind of something you need. Now we've got the bike flipped around. A better look at the other side of this unbelievable engine. Like I mentioned earlier, guys, a little bit more Cerakote from Dean over at Fast Blast and Coat. After he coated this cover, also burned off the Cerakote to reveal the Suzuki logo. Nice touch. A little more Cerakote up here. As you can see, some RC4 logos. This also went out to Nick over at Metro Lakes. After the Cerakote was done, laser etched that same logo that's in the hubs. I don't know if we'll be able to see it. We also tried to surprise Jimmy. There's a Haeseker Racing Engines logo up on the main exhaust valve cover up there. A little tough to see, but I wanted Jimmy to be stoked when that came back in and it had his logo on it. So now regarding the transmission, you guys heard me say this thing was pretty crunched up. The main shafts and a ton of gears were all replaced. Jimmy is actually able to tumble these in-house. So in addition to this nice little silicone fill here so that dirt won't get stuck inside, this thing's been tumbled, which is going to reduce friction, which is going to reduce heat, which is going to free up more power. So a nice in-house service Jimmy can do for you guys. Jimmy also took care of vapor blasting and rebuilding the stock Keihin Striker carburetor. I know you guys are a big fan of those, so it's nice to see one in this machine. Got a little V-Force 3 in there from our boys at Moto Tassanari. Nice touch there. So Jimmy, it's no surprise why you have over 60 engines torn apart in your shop at all times. I really appreciate our friendship, getting to know you. Thank you for being a part of this build. We'll jump up to these radiators real quick. My buddy Brett at ICW Radiator in North Carolina went ahead and took these OE radiators. You guys can see the seam welding all the way around the tanks. You can see the bracing. You can see more bracing up top. So gusseted corners, braced centers, straightened the fins best we could, vapor blasted everything. Filled those bad boys with Evans waterless coolant. Radiators for these are getting terribly hard to find. So when this bike showed up with some aftermarket radiators, I was a little worried. They were so freaking big that they were actually rubbing the exhaust valve door. The tanks came down so far and they were very squared off. So in the bin that came with this bike, there were some OE radiators that were salvageable. That was an absolute must for this thing, especially doing a tribute build. So thank you, Brett, for all of your hard work, for straightening these out, for getting them ready to be used again. You really saved the day on the OE radiator front. Now, something 2004 through 2008 RM250 and specific owners will be glad to know about, not very sexy, but super important, is that this airbox, OEM, brand new. I can still get them. I don't know how many are left, but they're gonna dry up eventually. New OEM airbox actually comes with the air boot. Actually comes with all the hardware. This stuff is complete. It's bolted together when you get it. It comes with the band clamp for the carburetor. I'm pretty sure this one came with a mud flap too, as a matter of fact, which would include the hardware. One of the reasons this is so cool is because when you're rebuilding a bike, usually this is thrashed. You can send something like this to Phil at Plastic Renovations. He can fix it for you. But I think it was 400 bucks. Brand new airbox, brand new air boot, mud flap, all the band clamps, the filter inside, the cage, and the bolt that holds the filter to the box itself is all included. So pop it on your bike, you're pretty much done. Use the filter of your choice, but very cool, you can still get that. And so hopefully those don't dry up anytime soon, but I'm sure it's inevitable someday. I've thrown those on the shop for build as well. It actually segues nicely into this ridiculous Pro Circuit Tie 2 shorty. Beautiful welds, amazing carbon Kevlar body. Everything is just nice and tight. It sounds absolutely unreal. This is just one of those pieces that a build like this demands. So I'm glad we were able to get our hands on one. That and the head piper also on the shop for build for you guys. Another amazing part we're still able to get our hands on, the Pro Circuit lowering link. It's a rose gold color. Looks absolutely sick and very factory, especially against Brandon's blacked out clevis. That's a stock clevis on that shock. You guys can anodize yours as well. Have all the casting flash removed from the knuckle, vapor blasted, brand new bearings, all the zinced hardware. Everything just looks so freaking good. I'm sure these have caught your eye a few times as we've been scanning over this beautiful RC4. These are Raptor foot pegs, full titanium, sharp as hell. These things will take a chunk right out of your shin, so don't play with them. These are actually off of a KTM, so one of the current model KTMs. That's what these are designed for. They actually fit pretty dang well on the RM. You won't find a peg like this for the Suzuki RM250 otherwise. Now, I haven't confirmed if other KTM pegs will fit the RM chassis. There's a good chance since these are on here, but I've used a set of really sharp tie pegs from another brand before I acquired these, and they actually didn't fit, and they were for the same year KTM. So something for you guys to explore. But when you put these KTM Raptors on the RM chassis, they're actually rolled forward a little bit, about 4 degrees. And so far with things like the Fastway pegs, different brand, I've noticed the same thing. Maybe that's because they fit other models in terms of the Fastways, but that actually throws you into more of a forward, chest over the bars, attack position. So not necessarily a bad thing. If they were peeled back a little bit, that might be kind of awkward, but they're damn near square with the bike. They might be back maybe a degree or two that way as well, but they look really good. They fit great. The diameter on the pin fits perfectly. You don't have a bunch of slop. And these particular pegs will actually also come with springs. So you get the peg, you get the spring, you can use the OEM Suzuki peg pin. Now, of course, once I finally figured this out, this was one of those things that after having a different set not fit from a different titanium peg manufacturer, I was scratching my head a little bit. Thank you, Austin Barnhouse, if you're watching, for giving me a part number, which you guys can find on my website. The springs that come with it, after everything's already been sent out for zinc and refinished, you know, you get these. And they look okay, but that's one of those things in hindsight. It's like, damn, if I could have figured out the peg thing sooner, I could have got these out, stripped them, vaped them, and zinced them, and they would have matched a little better. But otherwise, really happy that we can get such a badass peg on such an old-ass bike. Moving down from those pegs, you guys can see a very bright, shiny, brushed swing arm here. This has actually been stripped. All these swing arms that you see nowadays come with a clear anodizing on them, protects them from corrosion and things that would normally stain them while you're riding. So this would be a high maintenance swing arm, I would say, if you were to ride this bike, but the stripping goes down so that we can not only get everything consistent and even, then we take buffing pads, maybe some McCameron's Prime MX wheels, get as many dents and dings out as we can, use those same pads at the end to brush the lines gently into the swing arm. You can see some of them there in the top. You can also see some dents that remain. You don't want to take any structural integrity out of this thing, so you got to have a delicate balance of clean up and it not breaking on you. But these bikes also normally have a casting flash line that goes down the end of the swing arm here. All that's been burned off. All that's been brushed. You finish this whole thing up with some SOS pads, and there you go. You get an absolutely gorgeous swing arm that was saved, that looked like absolute trash before. And that, my friends, leads me to something very special here at the end. The brand new, specific, just for RM250s, 2SM axle blocks. Let's talk about it. Now, Johnny and I were able to work on these together to correct something that I've found to be an error with virtually every aftermarket RM250 axle block that I've ever used on my personal RM250. So cut from billet. He's got some cool anodized colors as well. He's got his logo there in the back. But if you guys have been watching the 2006 RM250 build and giveaway series, I talked about the issue that is specific to these RM250 axles and their aftermarket axle blocks. I'll go over it one more time. Now the other side, those always fit great, but the problem lies in the axle behind the right side axle block. By the time the axle finally pops out of this hole, which is covered up, you can barely see it, the threads stop and you have a small shoulder, maybe 2 millimeters worth of shoulder that sticks out. And so what would happen would be the guys that would make aftermarket axle blocks would make the diameter of the axle block larger to go over the axle, but then it would be sloppy on the threads here. So what John has done, and we've verified together, is that his axle block diameter, or the hole in the axle block, is cut to the opening. Let's say the opening's sucked down to go over these threads because the axle is larger, 22 mil, then tapers down to the threaded area. So his block encapsulates the threaded area, and on the back of his block, there's a chamfer that will accept and let that larger 22 or opened up part of the axle drop into the back of this thing. So you have no slop, you have perfect alignment that keeps all of your marks in order on both sides, so your wheel isn't crooked in your swing arm, and these things fit absolutely amazing. John, you killed it on these. This is very cool because, again, nobody's making stuff for RM250s. So, guys, we're very fortunate to have dudes like Johnny, who has recently gone on his own as a machinist, making this stuff. So check him out. He'll be linked below as well. And moving up from there, I think the last thing I've yet to touch on is the frame tape from my man Corey over at Anchor Tape. He has black and gray rubberized grip tape for these RM250s and RM125s. Again, somebody making stuff for these bikes that are no longer produced. Keep that FBC frame protected. And these are one of those finishing moves on a bike like this. So Corey, you killed it. Thanks for keeping all my bikes taped up. I love this stuff. I've also got some 102 octane race fuel in this bad boy that smells freaking ridiculous from our boys at ETS. Of course, Maxima, true to life, fills the engine and a few other key components like the braking systems. That's it, guys. As you can see, like I said earlier in the beginning of this video, it takes an army to build these things. I don't fabricate frames. I don't build foot pegs. So it's very necessary to have all these amazing people on board. I'm very honored to be able to work with all you guys. Most of you I've gotten to meet in person or work with for a few years. And you really are the difference between what could be and what is. So I really appreciate all you guys for helping me out and being a part of what I like to call the mXrevival build team. And Dan, thank you so much for the opportunity to do this for you. This kind of stuff sincerely fulfills my sense of purpose as a human being. This is a dream life. I kid you guys not. So your trust, again, the opportunity to do this, I can't believe it. After this video, I'm actually going to go pick up an 03 KX250 in town that just showed up from New York. Anthony, your bike is here. Another customer, full build, so we're going to go with a PC vibe on that bike. Most likely something classic, something timeless. Also got an 02 YZ250. Robert, your bike is almost done. You guys may have seen that on Instagram. It is a triple S front and rear swapped machine with purple fork tubes, purple wheels, very throwback. We got the 50th anniversary Yamaha decals on a Revolution kit. So I'll link all that stuff below. There's way too much cool stuff going on all the time. As you can see, it gets me motor mouthing. At any rate, guys, thank you for watching this build overview video. I hope you enjoy the new shop per build section on the mxrevival.com website. I'm gonna start doing one of those for everything that's been built in the past, like the YZ500s, the MC500s, this bike, the other two I just mentioned. That way you guys have sort of a really easy go-to library for that specific part you want rather than just a bunch of jumbled up crap on the website. So excited to debut that. Thank you for looking at it. And again, if you guys want to take a crack at the other 06 RM250 build and giveaway that's going on right this very minute on that same website, you should go check it out. There's going to be something, one last super expensive, high dollar, none of them out there part going on in the next YouTube video. And let's just say, I don't think you want to miss it. And I am super anxious to get it done. So again, way too much cool stuff going on all the time. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you. If you have any questions about the build, because we did cover a lot of ground, or any specific questions that are more technical, never be shy. Drop them below. Send me an email with the contact link on the website. And I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day. I'll talk to you real soon. See ya.